Leonardo, a cold and guarded millionaire, hires a nanny to care for his sickly son, keeping her at arm's length while maintaining control over his carefully constructed life. But when Isabella, the nanny with a mysterious past, starts breaking down his walls, their dynamic shifts in ways he never expected. What begins as a professional arrangement soon unravels into a journey of healing, buried secrets, and an undeniable connection that challenges everything Leonardo thought he knew about love and loss. Will their fragile bond survive the shadows of the past, or will fear and guilt tear them apart forever? The Cortez mansion stood majestically against the Boston skyline, its reflective windows catching the fiery hues of the October sunset. Inside, Leonardo Cortez sat in his office, the city stretched before him in a hazy blur. A glass of whiskey rested untouched on the mahogany desk as his dark eyes stared into the distance, lost in thought. The soft creak of the door pulled him back to reality. Margaret, his trusted assistant of over 10 years, stepped in, holding a black folder. "Mr. Cortez, here are the resumes of the candidates you requested," she said, her voice calm but tinged with concern. She knew the weight of the situation all too well. "How many this time?" Leonardo asked, swiveling his chair to face her. 15, all highly qualified and experienced with children needing special care." Margaret placed the folder on the desk. Leonardo flipped through the resumes quickly. On paper, each candidate seemed perfect, but his years of experience had taught him how deceptive appearances could be. He sighed. "Schedule interviews with the top 3 for tomorrow." Margaret hesitated before speaking. "Doctor," Matthews called. "He insists Lucas needs stability. Changing nannies every 2 months isn't—" "I paid Dr. Matthews to care for my son's health, not to advise me on how to manage my household," Leonardo interrupted, his tone as cold as the autumn wind outside. Margaret nodded and turned to leave, but she stopped at the door. "Lucas asked if you'd have dinner with him tonight." Leonardo's jaw tightened. "I have a video conference with investors in Tokyo," he said, but paused, remembering the look of disappointment that always clouded his son's face when he canceled plans. "Tell him, no, cancel the conference. I'll be there at 7. Alone again, Leonardo opened his desk drawer and took out a photograph. Catherine's radiant smile stared back at him, her green eyes full of life, eyes their son Lucas had inherited. 5 years had passed since the accident. Yet, the pain felt as fresh as ever. The faint sound of Lucas coughing echoed from downstairs, followed by the gentle voice of Mrs. Peterson, the current nanny, the 5th one this year. Leonardo knew he had to find someone permanent, but trusting a stranger with his son's care was terrifying. Descending the marble staircase, he found Lucas in the living room, wrapped in his favorite blanket and watching a documentary about the ocean. When the boy saw him, he lit up with a smile that tightened something in Leonardo's chest. Lucas was the spitting image of Catherine, from his golden curls to the freckles across his nose. "Dad, are you having dinner with me tonight?" Lucas asked, hope shining in his eyes. "Yes, champ. How about we order that pizza you like?" Leonardo replied. Lucas's face brightened, but the moment was cut short by a bout of coughing. Mrs. Peterson hurried over with an inhaler, and Leonardo stood helplessly as his son struggled to breathe. Moments like these reminded him of how fragile Lucas was, and how much he had to protect the one person who still mattered in his life. Later that night, after tucking Lucas into bed, Leonardo retreated to his private office. He turned on the monitors that displayed every room in the house, a nightly ritual to ensure his son's safety. As he reviewed the candidates' files again, one name stood out: Isabella Martinez. Her references were impeccable, her experience extensive. But what caught his attention was her photo, a genuine smile that reached her eyes, unlike the polished, rehearsed looks of the other applicants. The phone rang, pulling him from his thoughts. It was his lawyer, Richard. "Leonardo, I've received the documents for the new nanny. Should I include the usual confidentiality clauses?" All of them, Leonardo replied. And add one about the security cameras. You know that might scare off good candidates, don't you? Leonardo glanced at Catherine's photo. Anyone with nothing to hide won't mind the cameras. After hanging up, he studied Isabella's resume once more. Something about her intrigued him, whether it was her qualifications or the sincerity in her photo. He couldn't shake the feeling that this interview would be different. The next day, Isabella Martinez entered the stark meeting room of Cortez Enterprises. Sunlight poured through the large windows, softening the austere atmosphere. Dressed in a modest navy blue outfit, she held herself with a calm confidence, though her heart raced. Leonardo observed her intently from across the glass table, noting her composed demeanor, steady eye contact, and the quiet strength in her presence. "Ms. Martinez," he began, his tone measured. "Your resume is impressive. 6 years, caring for children with special needs, a specialization in pediatric nursing, and glowing letters of recommendation. Almost too perfect." Isabella smiled faintly. "Mr. Cortez, I learned long ago that perfection is an illusion. What I offer is absolute dedication and honesty." Her response caught him off guard. Most candidates would scramble to assure him of their competence. "Tell me about your last position," he asked, leaning back in his chair. "I cared for a boy named William for 3 years. He had cystic fibrosis. Those were challenging but deeply rewarding years." She paused, her composure faltering slightly as emotion flickered in her eyes. "William passed away 6 months ago. That's when I decided I needed time to process the loss." "And what makes you—" Leonardo began, but the conversation lingered in his mind, already marking this encounter as unlike any other. Isabella's calm gaze met Leonardo's as she answered his question. "I believe I'm ready to take on another complex case because grief has taught me compassion, not fear. Your son deserves someone who understands that caregiving goes beyond administering medication or following protocols." Leonardo stood, his tall frame silhouetted against the window as he stared out at the estate. "Ms. Martinez, I need to be honest with you. This position requires more than just professional competence. There are security cameras throughout the house. Your privacy will be heavily restricted, and many people find that level of surveillance unbearable." Isabella didn't flinch. "I understand your need to protect your son, Mr. Cortez. If I were in your position, I would likely do the same." She paused meaningfully before continuing. "But I hope, over time, you'll see that trust is earned through actions, not surveillance." Leonardo turned to face her, his piercing eyes locking onto hers. "Are you questioning me, Ms. Martinez?" "No, sir," Isabella replied calmly, her voice unwavering. "I'm simply being honest, as I promised at the start of this conversation." A heavy silence filled the room, the tension thick. Margaret, watching from the doorway, held her breath. In all her years working for Leonardo, she had never seen anyone address him so directly. Leonardo broke the silence with an unexpected question. "Would you like to meet Lucas?" On the 4th floor of the mansion, Lucas was finishing his physiotherapy session when Leonardo and Isabella entered. His green eyes lit up at the sight of his father, but it was Isabella who immediately captured his attention. "You must be Lucas," she said warmly, walking over with a smile. "I hear you're a big fan of documentaries about the ocean." Lucas's face brightened. "Do you like them too?" "I love them," Isabella said enthusiastically. "Did you know humpback whales sing new songs every year?" Lucas laughed, a sound so rare it made Leonardo freeze. He hadn't heard his son laugh like that in weeks. For the next hour, Isabella chatted with Lucas about marine life, sharing fascinating facts about abyssal seas, coral reefs, and her time volunteering at an aquarium. Leonardo observed quietly, noting how effortlessly she wove breathing exercises into their conversation without Lucas realizing he was being guided through treatment. When Isabella left the room to get water, Lucas turned to his father. "Dad, she's different from the others." Leonardo nodded thoughtfully. "Yes, she is." Later that evening, back in his office, Leonardo reviewed Isabella's employment contract. Margaret entered, carrying a cup of coffee. "The other candidates are still waiting, sir," she informed him. "Cancel the interviews," he said, without looking up from the document. "Ms. Martinez starts tomorrow." Margaret hesitated. "Are you sure?" She was rather frank during the interview. "That's exactly why," Leonardo said, looking up. "Lucas needs someone who's not afraid to speak the truth, even if it means confronting me." That night, as Leonardo checked the security footage one last time, he paused on the recording of Isabella's interaction with Lucas. There was something undeniable in the way she engaged with his son, a rare blend of professionalism and genuine care. His phone buzzed with a message from Richard. "Contract finalized. Ms. Martinez starts tomorrow at 7 a.m. Leonardo glanced at the photograph of Catherine on his desk. "What would you think of her, my love?" he murmured into the silence. He could almost hear Catherine's voice, a memory of something she often said, "Eyes don't lie." And Isabella Martinez's eyes spoke of truth, kindness, and strength. For the first time in years, Leonardo allowed himself a glimmer of hope. Maybe, just maybe, this woman could bring light back into Lucas's life, and perhaps into the home that had been cloaked in shadows for far too long. The next morning, a soft mist hung over the sprawling gardens of the Cortez mansion. Isabella arrived promptly at 7 a.m., carrying a modest bag and a small, brightly wrapped package. Margaret greeted her in the grand entrance hall, her heels clicking against the polished marble floor. "Mr. Cortez is in a video conference, but he left detailed instructions for Lucas's routine," Margaret explained as she led Isabella upstairs. "The list of medications, schedules, and emergency contacts is in his room." They stopped in front of a door on the second floor, decorated with glowing stars. Margaret hesitated. "Ms. Martinez, Lucas had a rough night. The temperature change always affects his breathing." Isabella nodded empathetically. "May I see the night's records? It would help me understand his breathing patterns." Inside the room, Lucas slept fitfully, his small chest rising and falling unevenly. The soft, steady beeping of the heart monitor filled the space. Isabella approached his bed with quiet confidence, ready to begin the work that could help heal not just Lucas, but the entire household. Isabella quietly observed the monitor's soft beeping, her trained eyes carefully assessing Lucas's vital signs. As the boy stirred, she leaned in gently. "Good morning, little navigator," she whispered. Lucas opened his eyes slowly, a faint smile spreading across his pale face. "You really came," he rasped. "Of course I came," Isabella replied warmly, handing him a colorful package. "And I brought something special for you." Lucas unwrapped the package carefully, revealing a miniature constellation projector. His face lit up with wonder. "Wow, it's like having the universe in my room." "I thought we could create our own starry ocean," Isabella said with a grin. "But first, how about a nutritious breakfast to regain your energy?" Across the mansion, Leonardo watched the interaction on the security cameras. He was struck by the ease with which Isabella navigated the room, her natural ability to entertain Lucas while discreetly monitoring his health. Throughout the morning, she established a gentle yet structured routine, turning breathing exercises into playful games, weaving stories into nebulizer sessions, and getting Lucas to take his medication without resistance. At lunchtime, Leonardo decided to make a surprise appearance. He found Lucas at the kitchen table, eagerly eating a colorful soup. It was unlike anything on his usual menu. "What kind of soup is that?" Leonardo asked, raising an eyebrow. "It's my special recipe," Isabella replied confidently. "Rich in nutrients and low in sodium, as per the medical guidelines. The secret is fresh herbs." Lucas beamed and held out a spoon. "Dad, try it. It doesn't taste like medicine. It's magic." Leonardo hesitated, but finally accepted the bite. To his surprise, the soup was delicious. Turning to Isabella, he said, "Mrs. Martinez, can we talk in private?" In his office, Leonardo closed the door behind them. "I appreciate your initiative," he began, "but any changes to Lucas's diet need prior approval." "With all due respect, Mr. Cortez," Isabella said firmly, "the soup meets all dietary requirements. I've prepared a detailed composition sheet for you." She handed over a document. "Besides, I've noticed Lucas is resistant to eating. Turning meals into something enjoyable might help his recovery." Leonardo scanned the document for flaws, but found none. Before he could respond, Isabella continued, "There's something else. Lucas mentioned wanting to see the garden. With the weather improving, a few minutes of morning sun could be beneficial." Leonardo stiffened. "Absolutely not. The risks are too high." "On the contrary," Isabella countered, her tone calm but resolute. "Controlled exposure to fresh air can strengthen his immune system. Isolating him completely won't protect him forever." A tense silence filled the room as Leonardo grappled with her words. After a long pause, he finally said, "1 week. Show me positive results in a week, and I'll reconsider outside activities." That evening, after Lucas was asleep, Isabella was tidying her notes when she found a drawing he had made. It depicted 3 stick figures, a tall one, a small one, and a medium one, standing together under a starry sky. They were all smiling. The next morning, Leonardo discovered the drawing on his desk with a note attached. "Mr. Cortez, Lucas has a heart bigger than his room and dreams larger than his limitations. He drew this yesterday while talking about how wonderful it would be to watch the stars for real one day. Sometimes, protecting someone means allowing small, calculated risks. Respectfully, Isabella Martinez." Sitting back in his chair, Leonardo gazed at the drawing, Catherine's words echoing in his mind. "Love without freedom is a gilded cage, my love." For the first time, he wondered if his overprotectiveness was stifling Lucas's chance to truly live. Later that night, Leonardo watched on the monitors as Isabella adjusted the constellation projector in Lucas's room, casting a starry universe across the ceiling. Lucas's laughter echoed softly as he pointed to constellations, his eyes sparkling with a joy Leonardo hadn't seen in years. Perhaps, he thought, it was time to loosen the reins, if only a little. Over the next month, subtle but profound changes began to ripple through the Cortez household. Lucas's laughter filled the once silent halls, and even Leonardo noticed a newfound strength in his son, despite his condition. On a particularly clear morning, Leonardo canceled a meeting after seeing on the monitor that Lucas was experiencing a respiratory crisis. He rushed to his son's room, but when he arrived, Isabella was already handling the situation with calm expertise. "Breathe with me, Captain," she said softly, sitting behind Lucas and guiding his breathing. "Remember our story about the diver? Let's go up to the surface slowly." Lucas, leaning against her, mimicked her rhythm, his small hands clutching her arms. Standing unnoticed in the doorway, Leonardo watched the scene unfold. "All right," Isabella continued, her voice soothing. "Now, tell me 3 things you can see." Lucas exhaled shakily. "The star projector, my ocean book, and Mom's picture." Leonardo's chest tightened as he noticed Catherine's photo on the bedside table, her eternal smile gazing down on her son. "Good. Now, 2 things you can touch. My blanket and your necklace," Lucas said, his small fingers brushing the anchor pendant Isabella always wore. "Perfect," Isabella praised, smiling. "And 1 thing you can smell? The chamomile tea you make." The crisis passed, leaving Lucas exhausted but stable. Isabella tucked him in with gentle care. When she turned to leave, she froze, startled to see Leonardo standing there. "Mr. Cortez, I didn't see you. I'm sorry. How long have you been using this technique with him?" Leonardo asked, his voice unreadable. "The anchoring technique? Since the 2nd week," Isabella explained. "It helps prevent panic during crises by grounding him in his senses." Leonardo nodded, his expression thoughtful. For the first time, he realized that Isabella wasn't just helping Lucas heal. She was teaching him to navigate his world with strength and resilience. And maybe, Just, maybe, she was teaching him too. Leonardo ran a hand through his hair, a rare gesture that revealed his vulnerability. "Why wasn't I informed?" he asked, his voice quieter than usual. "It's in the daily report I send you," Isabella replied softly. "Page 3, paragraph 2 of last week's report." Leonardo's mind flashed to the document he had skimmed over, too preoccupied with corporate mergers and acquisitions. Guilt hit him like a tidal wave. "Mr. Cortez," Isabella hesitated before continuing, her voice firm but gentle. "May I make a suggestion?" He nodded silently, his eyes fixed on his sleeping son. "Lucas needs his father just as much as he needs his medication. Your presence has a therapeutic effect that no treatment can replace." "I have a company to run," Leonardo defended, but his voice lacked conviction. "And you have a son to love?" Isabella countered, unwavering. "Let me show you something." She opened a neatly organized folder she kept in Lucas's room. "These are records of Lucas's vital signs. Notice how the numbers improve significantly when you're around. Look at last night, during the dinner you shared. His oxygen saturation remained stable for hours." Leonardo studied the charts, his analytical mind quickly picking up on the patterns she had highlighted. "Why do you keep such detailed records?" he asked. "Because care isn't just about administering medication," Isabella explained. "It's about understanding every factor that affects his well-being." That afternoon, for the first time in years, Leonardo canceled all his meetings. He spent hours with Lucas, listening to his son excitedly talk about maritime discoveries, Isabella's stories, and his dreams of seeing the ocean someday. From the security monitors, Isabella discreetly watched the father and son interact, a soft smile on her lips. Margaret entered the room, glancing at the screens. "It's the first time I've seen him like this since Catherine passed," she said quietly. "He's so afraid of losing Lucas that he forgets to live," Isabella replied. "How did you manage to convince him?" Margaret asked, curious. "I didn't," Isabella said with a gentle smile. "I just showed him that love and protection don't have to be opposites." That evening, after Lucas was tucked in bed, Leonardo found Isabella in the kitchen preparing chamomile tea. The aroma filled the room as she carefully poured the tea into a mug. "Miss Martinez," he began, but she interrupted gently. "Isabella, please." "Isabella," he corrected himself. "Thank you for today, for everything." She smiled warmly, the same smile that had intrigued him since their first meeting. "Lucas is an extraordinary boy, Mr. Cortez. He doesn't just need to survive, he deserves to flourish." Leonardo picked up a cup of tea, the soothing scent reminding him of Catherine. "She used to say something like that," he murmured. It was the first time he had mentioned his late wife voluntarily in years. The silence between them wasn't awkward. It was filled with mutual understanding. Later that night, before going to bed, Leonardo did something he had never done before. He turned off the cameras in Lucas's room. Some things, he realized, needed to be felt with the heart, not monitored by screens. Autumn painted the mansion's gardens in golden hues as Isabella completed her second month of work. The household had settled into a comfortable routine, and even Leonardo had begun to relax his strict protocols. But one hectic afternoon, an accidental discovery would disrupt the fragile harmony they had built. While organizing documents in Leonardo's office at his request, Isabella accidentally knocked over an old folder. As she gathered the scattered papers, a line in a police report caught her eye. "Suspicious circumstances regarding brake system failure." Her breath hitched, but before she could process the information, a voice startled her. "What are you doing?" Leonardo stood in the doorway, his face dark with restrained fury. "Mr. Cortez, I'm sorry," Isabella began, her voice steady despite her pounding heart. "The briefcase fell, and I—" "Get out," he interrupted, his voice cold as steel. "Please, let me explain." "Get out!" he roared, the sound echoing through the walls. Shaken, Isabella backed away, finding Lucas in the hallway, his wide eyes filled with worry. "What happened to Dad?" he asked softly. "Nothing, darling," Isabella said, steadying her voice. "Sometimes adults need a moment alone." She led him back to his room, hiding the storm inside her. Hours later, after Lucas had fallen asleep, Isabella found an envelope tucked into her bag. Inside was a large check and a note. "Your services are no longer required." But instead of packing her belongings, Isabella marched to Leonardo's office. She found him sitting in the dark, a half-empty glass of whiskey in his hand. "You can't fire me," she said firmly. Leonardo looked up, disbelief flickering across his face. "Excuse me?" "Lucas has an important appointment tomorrow. Next week, he starts aquatic physiotherapy. In 3 days, he has a presentation on his whale project. I'm not abandoning him in the middle of all this." "You've crossed every line," Leonardo began, his voice rising. "No, Mr. Cortez," Isabella interrupted, her tone unwavering. "You've built so many walls, you've forgotten there are people on the other side. Don't you dare! Including your son." Isabella's voice trembled with emotion. "Lucas asks about his mother every day. And do you know what he wants to know most? If she loved him, because his father never talks about her, never shares memories, never lets her live, in his words." Leonardo shot to his feet, knocking over his glass. "You don't know anything about loss," he growled. "I know more than you think," Isabella replied, her voice soft yet resolute. "William wasn't the first patient I lost, and every loss has taught me one thing. Silence doesn't protect, it suffocates." The room fell into a suffocating silence. Leonardo staggered toward the window, his shoulders rigid with tension. Finally, he spoke, his voice broken. "It was my fault." Leonardo's voice was barely a whisper. "Catherine wanted to go to Lucas's recital. I was caught up in an important merger. I said I'd send the driver, but she insisted on going alone. If I had gone with her, the accident wouldn't have happened." "Or," Isabella said softly, "would you have lost them both?" Leonardo turned to her, his eyes glassy, with unshed tears. "The report. There were suspicions of sabotage, a competitor targeting me. Catherine died because of me. She died because someone committed a terrible crime." "It's not your fault," Isabella said firmly. "How can you be so sure?" he asked, his voice cracking. "Because I see how you protect Lucas, how you'd sacrifice everything for him. The man I—" Isabella stopped abruptly, realizing what she had nearly said, but Leonardo caught it, his gaze locked on hers with an intensity that made her heart race. "Miss Martinez." "I'm sorry," she said, retreating toward the door. "That was inappropriate." "Isabella," he called, using her first name again, his voice gentler this time. "Please, stay." She paused, her hand on the doorknob. "Lucas needs you," Leonardo continued. "And maybe I do too." Before either could say more, a scream rang out from Lucas's room. They both ran and found the boy sitting up in bed, tears streaming down his face. "Mommy," he sobbed. "I dreamt about Mommy." Leonardo hesitated for a moment before sitting on the bed and pulling his son into his arms. "Do you want me to tell you about the day your mom took you to see the dolphins for the first time?" Lucas's eyes widened with curiosity. It was the first time his father had ever offered a memory of Catherine. Isabella quietly moved to leave, but Leonardo gently reached out, catching her wrist. "Stay," he asked. "Please." And so, in the early hours of the morning, the walls between them truly began to crumble. Leonardo shared stories about Catherine, her laughter, her love of the sea, her boundless joy for life. Lucas fell asleep smiling, finally hearing more about the mother he had lost so early. In the days that followed, the atmosphere in the Cortez mansion shifted. Isabella's unintended confession created a subtle tension between her and Leonardo. He oscillated between moments of unexpected closeness and stretches of overly professional distance. Meanwhile, Lucas, with his sharp intuition, began to notice the changes. One chilly November morning, during a physiotherapy session in the heated pool, Lucas decided to approach the subject in his own way. "Isabella, do you like my dad?" he asked innocently. The question startled her, nearly making her drop the flotation device. "Of course I do, Lucas. Your father is a good man." "Not like that," Lucas said, his green eyes sparkling mischievously. "Do you like him, like Mom liked him? I saw you looking at each other at dinner yesterday." Isabella's cheeks flushed. "Lucas, the relationship between your father and me is strictly professional. But he smiles differently when you're around," Lucas continued, undeterred, "like in the old pictures with Mom." Before she could respond, Margaret appeared at the edge of the pool. "Miss Martinez, Mr. Cortez has requested your presence in the office." On her way to the office, Isabella tried to steady her nerves. She found Leonardo standing by the window, his posture rigid with tension. "We need to set some boundaries," he said, without turning around. "Mr. Cortez, if this is about—" "It's about everything," he interrupted, finally facing her. "About how Lucas is getting too attached. About how things are changing." "Change isn't always bad," Isabella said carefully. "It is when it puts my son's well-being at risk," Leonardo replied sharply. He ran a hand through his hair, the gesture one Isabella now recognized as a sign of his anxiety. "Lucas has already lost his mother. I can't let him get attached to someone who might leave, like all the others." "Like all the other nannies you dismissed," Isabella said, her voice carrying a quiet defiance. "Exactly. It was safer that way." "Safer for whom, Mr. Cortez?" she pressed. "For Lucas? Or for you?" The weight of her words filled the room. Leonardo walked to his desk, picking up an old photo. "Catherine and I met in college," he said after a moment. "She was everything I wasn't, spontaneous, full of life. She said I needed to learn to dance in the rain instead of just building shelters." Isabella stepped closer. "And she was right. You're failing Lucas by trying to shield him from everything." Leonardo's head snapped up, surprised by her bluntness. "You're failing because love isn't something we can control," Isabella said gently. "Lucas needs to learn to love, to trust, to connect, even if it means taking risks." "Risks? Like you?" Leonardo asked, his voice barely a whisper. "Like anyone he chooses to let into his heart," she replied softly. Leonardo took a step closer, closing the space between them. "What about me, Miss Martinez? What choices do I have?" Her heart raced as he moved even closer, his hand lightly brushing her cheek. For a moment, time seemed to freeze. "Dad! Isabella!" Lucas's voice shattered the moment. They turned to see him bounding into the office, dripping wet and beaming. "Look what I did in the pool!" Margaret hurried in after him, a towel in hand. "I'm sorry, Mr. Cortez. He insisted on showing you." Leonardo glanced at Lucas, then at Isabella, and finally at the photo of Catherine on his desk. It felt like 3 different worlds were colliding in his mind. "Lucas, you need to dry off before you catch a cold," Isabella said, regaining her composure. "Come on." As she led Lucas out of the office, Leonardo called after her. "Miss Martinez." She stopped at the door but didn't turn around. "Tomorrow night, after Lucas is asleep, can we continue our conversation?" "I'm not sure we should, Mr. Cortez," Isabella replied, her voice steady but hesitant. "Please," he said, his vulnerability evident. "We need to sort this out, for Lucas." "For Lucas," she agreed softly, though they both knew it wasn't entirely true. And that, she realized, was the real problem. Later that night, Leonardo checked the security cameras one last time. He paused at the sight of Isabella reading to Lucas before bed, her voice animated as she brought the story's characters to life. Lucas snuggled against her, smiling brightly. "What should I do, Catherine?" Leonardo murmured, staring at the photo of his late wife. The silence that followed was heavy with possibilities and fears. But the conversation he planned for the following night never happened. An unexpected storm swept through Boston, bringing with it more than just rain and wind. The humid weather and sudden drop in temperature triggered one of the most severe respiratory crises Lucas had ever faced. The storm raged outside, But inside the mansion, Leonardo and Isabella stayed by the boy's side through a sleepless night. Each dealt with the fear differently. Isabella remained composed as she administered medication and monitored his vitals, while Leonardo paced the room like a restless lion, alternating between frantic calls to doctors and moments of barely contained panic. "His heart rate is too fast," Isabella murmured, her eyes on the monitor. "We need to get him to the hospital," Leonardo replied, his face pale with worry. "I've already called an ambulance." "No," Isabella said firmly, her tone steady but insistent. "A trip to the hospital in this storm will only make things worse. Trust me." Their gazes met in the dim room, illuminated only by the soft glow of Lucas's star projector. Between them, Lucas gasped for air, his small body fighting against the crisis. "Mr. Cortez," Isabella said softly, "I need you to sit here." "What?" he asked, confused. "Sit on the bed, lean back against the pillows." When he hesitated, she added, "Please." Reluctantly, Leonardo obeyed. Isabella gently positioned Lucas against his father's chest, the boy's back leaning into Leonardo. "Now breathe with me," she instructed, slowly and deeply. "Lucas will feel your rhythm and try to follow naturally." For long minutes, the three of them stayed like this, breathing in sync. Gradually, Lucas's breathing steadied, his tense muscles relaxing against his father. "Tell a story," Lucas whispered, his voice weak. Leonardo froze. It had always been Catherine who told the stories. He glanced at Isabella, who touched his hand briefly, a small, reassuring gesture. It was a summer night," Leonardo began hesitantly, "when your mother and I met. She was dancing in the rain on campus, and I thought she was crazy." As he continued, the story began to flow more naturally, memories he had kept buried finding their way to the surface. Lucas listened intently, his eyes heavy with sleep, but refusing to close as he hung on every word. "She said life was too short to wait for the sun," Leonardo continued, his voice breaking slightly. "Sometimes, you have to dance in the storm." A particularly loud clap of thunder made Lucas flinch. Isabella turned up the brightness on the star projector, filling the room with calming light. "Look, Captain," she whispered. "Even storms can be beautiful when seen from the right place." Lucas finally fell asleep, his breathing regular and peaceful. Leonardo remained motionless, as though afraid any movement might disturb the hard-won calm. "You can rest now," he said softly to Isabella. "I know," she replied, adjusting the covers around Lucas. "But you don't have to stay alone." The silence between them was broken only by the sound of rain tapping against the windows and Lucas's steady breathing. "Do you know what else Catherine told me that night?" Leonardo asked, after a long pause. "That some people are like lighthouses. They don't drive away the storm, but they help us navigate through it." Isabella felt the weight of his words, understanding what he was really trying to say. "Leonardo," she said softly. "After tonight," he continued, "I think we can dispense with the formalities." She nodded, a small smile playing on her lips. "Leonardo, sometimes even lighthouses need guidance. That's why they work in pairs." His gaze met hers, with an intensity that made her heart skip a beat. The storm outside began to subside, but the one inside them was just beginning to stir. Lucas mumbled in his sleep about stars and oceans, blissfully unaware of the moment unfolding around him. The next morning, Margaret found them in Lucas's room. The boy slept peacefully, while Leonardo and Isabella sat on opposite sides of the bed, united by their shared vigil and something unspoken. "Coffee's ready," Margaret announced softly, noticing their tired faces and exchanged glances. "And the medical reports you requested have arrived, Mr. Cortez." "Thank you," Leonardo replied without taking his eyes off Isabella. "Please cancel my appointments for today. I'll stay home." Margaret smiled discreetly as she left, thinking to herself, some storms don't just destroy, they renew. The end of November brought colder days and subtle but profound changes in the dynamics of the Cortez mansion. Leonardo started working more from home, his attention often straying from financial reports to watch Lucas's therapy sessions or his study time with Isabella. One particularly chilly afternoon, while Lucas napped, Leonardo found Isabella in the library, organizing materials for his school project. "We need to talk," he said, closing the door behind him. Isabella straightened, sensing the seriousness in his tone. "About Lucas?" she asked. "About Lucas. And about us," he replied, his words heavy with unspoken meaning. She held his gaze as he continued. Richard found more information about Catherine's accident. The sabotage. It wasn't a competitor. Isabella set down the papers she was holding, giving him her full attention. "It was someone inside the company," he said, his voice hard. "Someone I trusted. The former head of security, Maxwell Bennett, confessed to everything yesterday." Her breath caught. "Why are you telling me this?" Leonardo turned to the window, his reflection pale against the cold gray sky. "Because I need you to understand why I built these walls, why I installed the cameras, why I'm so afraid of trusting." "Of trusting me," Isabella added softly. "Yes," he admitted, stepping closer. "But you've broken down every wall I've built. With your honesty, your dedication to Lucas, A sudden cough from Lucas's monitor interrupted him. Both moved instinctively toward the door, but the sound stopped, and Lucas settled back into peaceful sleep. "See," Isabella said with a small smile, "not all interruptions are emergencies." Leonardo didn't smile back. "You've changed everything," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "The way Lucas smiles now, how he talks about the future, how he finally gets to know his mother through your stories." Isabella's heart clenched. "Leonardo, Catherine always said true love isn't just about protecting, it's about setting free," he continued, his voice breaking. "I didn't understand that until you came." Isabella took a step back. "I'm your employee, Leonardo. I care for your son. We can't or won't?" he asked quietly, his question cutting through her defenses. "It's not that simple," she whispered. "Why not?" "Because I have my own walls," she admitted. "William wasn't just a patient I lost, he was my brother." Leonardo stilled as she continued, her voice trembling. "For 3 years, I cared for him, battled cystic fibrosis alongside him, gave up everything, relationships, career, my personal life. When he died, I promised myself I'd never let myself love someone I could lose again." Leonardo stepped closer, taking her hands in his. "So we're 2 cowards?" "No," she said softly. "2 wounded protectors." Leonardo's thumb traced slow circles on her palm. "Lucas asked me something yesterday," he said. "He wanted to know if it was wrong to be happy, even though he misses his mother." Tears pricked Isabella's eyes. "And what did you say?" "I told him Catherine would be furious if we thought that honoring her meant we couldn't be happy." "Her memory meant living in sadness," Leonardo murmured. The words hung in the air, heavy with emotion, when the sound of footsteps in the hallway broke the moment. They instinctively stepped apart as Margaret entered, pausing when she noticed the tension in the room. "Sorry to interrupt, Mr. Cortez. The council is waiting on the line." Leonardo nodded, reluctant to let the moment end. "I'll be there in a minute." When Margaret left, he turned to Isabella, his eyes searching hers. "Have dinner with me tonight, after Lucas goes to sleep." "I don't think that's appropriate," Isabella replied carefully. "Not as boss and employee," Leonardo clarified. "As Leonardo and Isabella." She hesitated, years of guarding her heart battling against the urge to say yes. "And Lucas?" she asked. "Lucas already knows," Leonardo said with a soft smile. "In fact, he was the one who suggested I stop being silly and ask you to dinner." An involuntary laugh escaped her. "He said that? In those exact words?" "So what do you say?" he asked, hope lacing his tone. Before she could answer, Lucas's sleepy voice came through the monitor. "Dad, Isabella." "Saved by the bell," she muttered, moving toward the door. That's not a no, Leonardo observed, watching her leave. It's not a yes either, she called back over her shoulder. Yet his smile followed her all the way up the stairs, leaving her heart racing in a way she hadn't felt in years. In Lucas's room, Isabella found the boy sitting up in bed, rubbing his sleepy eyes. I dreamt about Mommy, he said softly as she sat beside him. She was smiling. She said she was happy. Isabella's heart squeezed at his words. Did she? She asked gently. Yes, Lucas said, his voice gaining strength. And she said sometimes you have to be brave to be happy. Isabella glanced at the door, where Leonardo stood silently, his expression warm as he watched the exchange. She smiled at Lucas. You know, I think your mom was very wise. So, are you having dinner with Dad? Lucas asked with a sly grin. Isabella laughed, surprised by his insight. We'll see. Now, how about we finish that project on whales? The dinner didn't happen that night, but a week later, on the first snowy evening of winter in Boston. Leonardo had prepared everything meticulously. The table was set on the heated, enclosed veranda, adorned with soft lights and a carefully selected menu. A small jazz ensemble played in the background, adding a touch of elegance to the evening. Isabella arrived punctually at 8 p.m., having just put Lucas to bed. She wore a simple navy blue dress that made her eyes sparkle like sapphires. I thought you said no, Leonardo teased, as he pulled out a chair for her. Technically, I never said no, Isabella replied with a small smile. I just postponed it until I was sure. Sure of what? He asked as he poured wine into their glasses. That it wouldn't harm Lucas, she admitted, taking a sip of her wine. And what conclusion did you come to? Actually, it was Lucas who helped me decide, she said, reaching into her pocket to retrieve a folded piece of paper. She handed it to him. Leonardo unfolded the paper to find a drawing of 3 figures holding hands under a starry sky. In the corner, a 4th figure surrounded by a golden glow smiled down at them. He said, "You're our family," Isabella explained softly. You, him, and me down here, and Catherine blessing us from above. Leonardo stared at the drawing for a long moment, his eyes shimmering with unshed tears. He has his mother's gift for seeing beyond appearances, he said quietly. The dinner flowed naturally, their conversation weaving between light-hearted moments and deeper confessions. They spoke about their lives before meeting, about William, about Catherine, and about the fears they carried, and the hopes they were slowly beginning to nurture. Do you know what I miss most about Catherine? Leonardo asked as they shared dessert. Her ability to see beauty in everything, even in storms. Like Lucas, Isabella said with a smile, and like you. Leonardo reached across the table to take her hand. You've brought color back into our lives. You know that, don't you? Before Isabella could reply, a familiar sound came from the monitor. Lucas coughing, followed by soft crying. I'll check on him, Isabella said, getting up. No, Leonardo said, gently holding her hand. Let me. Stay and enjoy the wine. In Lucas's room, Leonardo found his son sitting up in bed, silent tears streaming down his cheeks. Hey, champ, he said, sitting beside him. Nightmare? Lucas shook his head. Then what is it? I'm scared, Lucas whispered. What if Isabella leaves? Like Mom? Leonardo's heart ached as he pulled his son close. Lucas, look at me. Your mom never wanted to leave us. And Isabella, she's not going anywhere. Promise? I can't promise the future, son, but I can promise that I'll do everything I can to keep her in our lives. Will that do? Lucas nodded, snuggling into his father's arms. Dad? Yeah? Do you still love Mom? Leonardo kissed the top of Lucas's head. I'll always love your mom. She gave me you, the greatest gift of my life. So, it's okay to love Isabella too? Yes, son. The heart has infinite room for love. When Leonardo returned to the veranda, he found Isabella gazing at the falling snow, holding the jacket he had left on the chair. Is Lucas okay? She asked softly. Yes, he replied, He just needed some answers. And did you find them? Leonardo stepped closer, taking the jacket from her hands and slipping it on. Actually, I think we all got some answers tonight. Isabella turned to face him, her eyes reflecting the snow's soft glow. And in that moment, the walls that had surrounded their hearts for so long seemed to crack, letting the light in. Leonardo, don't say anything yet, Isabella whispered as she stepped closer to him. Just dance with me. Soft music filled the room as they moved together, slowly and effortlessly. The snow outside the balcony windows fell gently, creating a magical, almost surreal atmosphere. Catherine would be proud, Isabella said softly against his shoulder. Of what? Leonardo asked, his voice low. Of seeing you and Lucas living, not just surviving. Leonardo pulled back slightly to look into her eyes. That's thanks to you. She shook her head, her gaze drifting to the drawing Lucas had made, resting on the table. It's thanks to the three of us. And, she added, her eyes softening, thanks to her too. The snow continued to fall outside, but inside the heated balcony, something new was blossoming. It wasn't just love, it was understanding, a deep, shared realization that even bruised hearts can heal, and that sometimes the greatest blessings come disguised as life's hardest challenges. Isabella, Leonardo said, his voice filled with gratitude. Yes? Thank you for teaching us to dance in the storm. She smiled, her thoughts flickering to the stories about Catherine. And thank you for showing me that some lighthouses can be a home. As winter slowly began to retreat, the Cortez mansion faced its first major test. Lucas developed an infection that required a 3-day hospital stay, leaving both Leonardo and Isabella on edge. At the hospital, their carefully maintained composure began to crack. Leonardo alternated between frantic phone calls to specialists and moments of agonizing silence, while Isabella remained a constant presence at Lucas's bedside, refusing to leave, even for a moment. You need to rest, Leonardo insisted on the third night, finding her dozing uncomfortably in a chair. I'm fine, she replied, straightening up. I'd rather stay here. Why? He asked gently. She hesitated before answering, her voice barely audible. Because that's how I lost William. One night, I decided to go home and rest. When I came back in the morning, her words trailed off, choked by emotion. Leonardo crossed the room in 3 strides and pulled her into his arms. It was their first public display of affection, but in that moment, nothing else mattered except the comfort they gave each other. This isn't William, Isabella whispered against his shoulder, and you're not alone this time. Through half-closed eyes, Lucas watched the scene unfold, a small smile tugging at his pale lips. You look like a couple in a movie, he murmured weakly. They both broke apart, startled to realize he was awake. Isabella quickly regained her composure. How are you feeling, Captain? Hungry, Lucas replied, pointing to the 4th. Can I have something that's not clear? Leonardo laughed, a sound of genuine joy that hadn't escaped him in days. I'll see what the doctors say. Once they were alone again, Lucas looked at Isabella seriously. You love my dad, don't you? The directness of his question caught her off guard. Lucas. It's okay, he said, his green eyes wise beyond his years. Mom appeared in my dream yesterday. She said you have a heart as big as the ocean. Isabella felt tears well up in her eyes. Your father and you are very special to me, she said carefully. Then why do you pretend you're just our babysitter? Lucas asked. Love isn't complicated. It's easy. You just have to let it happen. Before she could respond, Leonardo returned with the doctor, bringing good news. The infection was subsiding, and Lucas was strong enough to go home the next day. That night, while Lucas slept soundly for the first time in days, Leonardo found Isabella in the hospital cafeteria. He sat beside her, his face showing a rare calm. The doctor said your dedication was crucial, he said, his tone sincere. The way you kept up his respiratory physiotherapy, even through the fever. I just did my job, Isabella replied modestly. No. He reached for her hand. "You did more than that. You fought for him, like a mother would." The words hung between them, heavy with meaning. Isabella looked away, her heart racing. "Leonardo, Marry me," he interrupted. The request stunned her into silence. "What?" she finally managed. "Marry me," he repeated, kneeling beside her, completely ignoring the curious stares of others in the cafeteria. "Not because Lucas needs a mother, not because I'm lonely, but because you turned our house into a home. Because you taught me that it's possible to love deeply twice in a lifetime, in different but equally true ways." "But what about your fear of losing again?" she asked, her voice trembling. "I'm still afraid," he admitted. "I probably always will be, but Catherine taught me to dance in the rain. And you showed me that some dances are worth the risk." Isabella stared at him, tears streaming down her face. "Does Lucas know about this?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Leonardo smiled, pulling a small box from his pocket. "He helped me choose the ring." Inside was a delicate sapphire ring, surrounded by tiny diamond stars. He said it had to be blue, like the ocean, because that's where you feel at home. And the stars are to remind us that there's always light, even on the darkest nights. "How long have you been planning this?" Isabella asked, her voice breaking with emotion. "Since that night on the balcony," Leonardo admitted. "But I waited for the right moment. Then I realized, there's no perfect moment. There are only moments, and it's up to us to make them special." Isabella looked at the ring, then at Leonardo, kneeling in front of her. She thought of all the walls she had built after losing William. She thought of Lucas's innocent wisdom about love. She thought of Catherine, blessing them in their dreams. "Yes," she whispered, her voice steady, despite the tears streaming down her cheeks. "Yes, I'll marry you." Leonardo's smile lit up the room, brighter than the stars Lucas loved so much. When Leonardo slid the ring onto Isabella's finger, a discreet applause echoed around the room from the curious onlookers. "I think we have an audience," Isabella whispered, her cheeks warming. "Let them see," Leonardo replied, pulling her into a gentle kiss. "Some stories deserve witnesses." News of their engagement spread quickly. Margaret was the first to notice the ring on Isabella's finger when they returned from the hospital, and her knowing smile suggested she had anticipated it long before. Isabella's transition from Lucas's nanny to Leonardo Cortez's fiancé generated a buzz in Boston's high society. Though gossip columns tried to sensationalize the story, the couple's dignified handling of the situation, always prioritizing Lucas's well-being, soon silenced even the harshest critics. One particularly meaningful morning, Leonardo found Isabella in Catherine's old bedroom, a place that had remained untouched for years. She stood quietly, gazing at the photographs on the walls. "Are you sure you want to do this today?" he asked gently. "Lucas deserves to know more about his mother," Isabella replied, her voice soft. She reached out to touch a photo of Catherine, pregnant and smiling by the ocean. "And I need to know her too." Leonardo stepped behind her, wrapping his arms around her in a comforting embrace. Together, they stood in silence, contemplating the preserved memories. "She would have liked you," he said after a moment. "How can you be sure?" Isabella asked, turning slightly to look at him. "Because you have the same spark in your eyes when you talk about making a difference in people's lives," Leonardo said, his voice filled with emotion. "Catherine always believed our purpose in life was to leave the world a little better than we found it." Lucas appeared in the doorway, hesitant. "May I come in?" he asked. "Of course, my love," Isabella called, holding out her hand to him. Lucas walked in slowly, his green eyes, so much like his mother's, taking in every detail of the room. "She liked to collect shells," Leonardo said, pointing to a shelf filled with delicate specimens. Each one had a story, like this one. Lucas picked up a small pink shell, turning it over in his hands. "What's the story of this one?" Leonardo smiled at the memory. "That's from the first time she felt you move." We were on the beach, and she swore you were dancing inside her to the sound of the waves." Isabella watched the interaction between father and son, her heart full of love and respect for the woman who had meant so much to both of them. Can we keep some of her things in my room?" Lucas asked, shyly. "Of course we can," Leonardo replied. He paused before adding, "Actually, I was thinking of turning this room into something special." "Like what?" Lucas and Isabella asked in unison. "A memorial," Leonardo said thoughtfully. "A place where we can come whenever we want to feel her presence, with her photos, her shells, her favorite books." "And we could add new things too," Lucas suggested, his eyes lighting up. "Like photos of us, so she can see how happy we are." Leonardo felt his throat tighten as tears welled up. "That's a perfect idea, son." That afternoon, the three of them worked together to reorganize the room, not to erase Catherine's presence, but to celebrate her in a new way. Isabella discovered a diary among Catherine's books and, with Leonardo's permission, began to read it aloud to Lucas. "She wrote about you every day during her pregnancy," Isabella told him. "Look at this. Today, my little sailor decided that 3 a.m. was the perfect time to practice swimming. Leonardo says he'll be an Olympic athlete, but I bet he'll be an ocean explorer." Lucas laughed, his smile bright. She was right. I do love the sea. As they sorted through old photographs, they came across one that was particularly touching. Catherine dancing in the rain, her face turned to the sky, radiant with joy. "This was on our wedding day," Leonardo explained, his voice filled with nostalgia. "It started raining during the reception, and instead of getting upset, she pulled everyone out to dance in the garden." Isabella smiled at the image, imagining the scene. She really knew how to turn ordinary moments into extraordinary ones. "Like you," Lucas said, wrapping his arms around Isabella's waist. That night, after Lucas had gone to sleep, Leonardo found Isabella standing on the balcony, gazing at the stars. He approached quietly, wrapping his arms around her as she leaned into him. "What are you thinking about?" he asked softly. "About how love takes so many forms," she replied. "And about how it's possible to honor the past while building the future." Leonardo held her closer, his hand brushing against the engagement ring on her finger. "Do you know what Catherine wrote in her last diary?" Isabella shook her head. "True love isn't possessive. It's like the ocean. It has infinite space to hold all the currents, all the tides, all the lives that pass through it." Leonardo's voice was filled with admiration. "She was very wise." "Yes, she was," Isabella agreed. "And I think she'd be happy to see us find our own tide." Later that night, Lucas asked to see the photo album again. On the last page, he placed the drawing he had made, their new family, including Catherine, glowing brightly in the sky. "Now it's complete," he said with satisfaction. Isabella and Leonardo exchanged a tender, emotional look. It truly was complete. Not because they had replaced what was lost, but because they had learned that love has the power to expand, creating new spaces without diminishing the old. Somewhere Catherine smiled, pleased to see her family not just finding comfort, but embracing a new kind of happiness. The wedding day dawned bright and clear, as if the universe itself had blessed the occasion. The Cortez mansion had been transformed, blending elegance with intimacy. The ceremony took place in the winter garden, where white and blue flowers created an atmosphere reminiscent of an illuminated seabed. Isabella prepared for the ceremony in what had once been her old bedroom, now temporarily converted into a bridal suite. The air was filled with quiet excitement, the promise of a new chapter about to begin. In the bridal suite, Margaret fussed over the final details of Isabella's dress, a simple ivory gown with soft, wave-like accents. She stepped back, studying her handiwork. "Something's missing," she murmured, adjusting the veil. At that moment, Lucas entered the room, dressed impeccably in his little tuxedo, carrying an old wooden box. "Dad asked me to give you this," he said, holding it out to Isabella. Inside the box was a delicate pearl necklace and a handwritten note. Isabella unfolded the note carefully and read, "Dear Isabella, Catherine wore these pearls on our wedding day. She said they were special because, like true love, they were formed through time, patience, and adversity. Today, they belong to you, not to replace memories, but to create new ones. With love, Leonardo." Tears filled Isabella's eyes, threatening to ruin her carefully applied makeup. Margaret, ever the professional, quickly intervened with a handkerchief. "Here, let me help you with the necklace," she offered, her voice soft and breaking slightly. Lucas watched intently as Margaret fastened the pearls around Isabella's neck. "You look beautiful," he said earnestly. "You look like a mermaid." Isabella knelt down to his level, mindful of her dress. "And you look like a real prince, my love." "Can I tell you a secret?" Lucas whispered. "Of course. I dreamt about Mom yesterday." "Really? And what did she say?" "She said she's happy because now she knows we'll never be alone." He hesitated, then added, "She also told me to thank you for looking after Dad's heart." Isabella hugged him tightly, her emotions nearly overwhelming her. "Thank you for sharing that with me, Lucas." In the winter garden, Leonardo waited anxiously. The judge was in place, and the small group of selected guests had taken their seats. Soft music began to play. Not the traditional wedding march, but a melodic tune reminiscent of ocean waves and whale songs. Lucas entered first, carrying the wedding rings with a confidence that brought smiles to everyone. Then, all eyes turned to Isabella as she appeared at the entrance. Leonardo felt his heart skip a beat when he saw her wearing the pearl necklace. It was as if Catherine herself was there, silently blessing this union. The judge began, "We are gathered today not only to celebrate a union, but to honor the journey that has brought these souls to this moment." When it came time for the vows, not a single eye in the garden was dry. Isabella began, her voice trembling slightly. "Leonardo, I promise not only to love you, but to honor the story that brought you to me. I promise to be a safe haven for you and Lucas. I promise to dance in the rain when life gets heavy, and I promise to keep alive the memory of the love that came before me." Leonardo took a deep breath before speaking. "Isabella, you taught me that the heart has an infinite capacity for love. I promise to honor every part of who you are, to celebrate your strength and kindness, and to create, with you and Lucas, a future full of stars and waves. I promise to always remember that some storms bring blessings in disguise, and that true love knows no limits of time or space." As the judge nodded to Lucas, he surprised everyone by adding his own words. "I promise to be the best son for both of you and to keep all the love in my heart. Love that's here and love that protects us from above." During the reception, which was held in the main garden, a light drizzle began to fall. Instead of running inside, the bride and groom exchanged a smile. "I think someone wants us to dance in the rain," Leonardo said, extending his hand to Isabella. The band began to play a soft version of Millionaire, and soon all the guests joined them, dancing under the gentle rain. Lucas twirled among the adults, his laughter ringing out like music, blending with the joy of the moment. As the celebration wound down, the three of them stood together on the balcony, watching a rainbow form across the horizon. "Look," Lucas said, pointing to the sky. "7 colors, like the 7 colors of love." "7 colors of love?" Isabella asked, intrigued. "Yes," Lucas said with a grin. "Red is Mom's love. It's still here. Orange is Dad's love for us. Yellow is my love for you. Green is nature's love. Blue is your love, Isabella. Indigo is the love that's coming. And violet?" He smiled mysteriously. "Violet is the love we don't know yet." Leonardo and Isabella exchanged emotional glances. Somehow, in his childlike wisdom, Lucas had perfectly captured the depth and complexity of their feelings. "You know what?" Leonardo said, pulling both of them into a hug. I think I finally understand what Catherine meant about dancing in the rain." "What did she mean?" Isabella asked. "That sometimes we need to let life surprise us. The best moments come when we least expect them. And love, true love, takes on many forms." Night fell softly over the Cortez mansion. Once a place of shadows and pain, it had transformed into a home filled with light, love, and hope. In Catherine's memorial room, a gentle breeze swayed the curtains, making the seashells hanging in the window chime softly, a final blessing for the family she had left behind. They had learned that love, in all its forms, is eternal. If you could write a letter to keep in the memorial room, as the Cortez family did for Catherine, what memories or unspoken feelings would you want to preserve for someone special? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe, leave a like, and share your thoughts. Your participation means so much to us. See you next time.